My brother stood at my wedding reception with a microphone and said, "Before we toast the bride, let's talk about who really paid for this day." The room went silent. My husband's hand tightened on mine, and I realized the envelope I'd found in my father's study 3 weeks ago wasn't a mistake. It was a warning. Most people imagine their wedding day as the happiest moment of their life. Mine started that way. The venue was perfect, the flowers were exactly what I'd dreamed of, and for once I felt like the center of attention in a family that had spent 28 years making me feel like an afterthought. Growing up in the Morrison household in Chicago meant learning early that success wasn't measured by effort but by visibility. I was the organized one, the responsible one, the daughter who graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern, landed a corporate job at 23, and never once asked my parents for money after college. My older brother, Derek, was the opposite. He dropped out of college twice, bounced between business ventures that never materialized, and seemed to drift through life with no direction and even less ambition. But my mother, Patricia, always defended him. "Derek's finding himself," she'd say with a patient smile. "Not everyone follows a traditional path, Emma. You should be more understanding." Meanwhile, my father, Richard Morrison, owner of Morrison and Associates, a successful architectural firm, would just sigh and write another check. When I got my first promotion, Dad nodded and said, "That's good, sweetheart. Can you talk to your brother? He needs career advice." When Derek showed up to Thanksgiving without a job for the third year in a row, Dad clapped him on the back and said, "You'll figure it out, son. You always do." I stopped expecting recognition by the time I was 25. I built my life quietly, carefully, the way you build a wall brick by brick when you know no one's watching. I met Marcus at a marketing conference, fell in love with his steadiness, his kindness, the way he saw me when my own family looked right through me. When he proposed on a rainy Saturday in Lincoln Park, I said yes before he finished the question. Planning the wedding was supposed to be joyful. Instead, it became another reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. Every decision turned into a negotiation. Mom wanted a bigger guest list, Dad wanted the reception at his country club, Derek, who hadn't held a steady job in 5 years, had opinions about everything from the caterer to the photographer. "I'm just trying to help, Em," he'd say whenever I pushed back. "You're so stressed, let me handle some of this." But I didn't want his help. I wanted to plan my own wedding without interference. Marcus and I had saved carefully, budgeted meticulously. We could afford something beautiful without asking my parents for money. That independence mattered to me. It was proof that I'd built something real, something that didn't depend on the Morrison name or my father's checkbook. 3 weeks before the wedding, I stopped by my parents' house to pick up some family photos for the reception slideshow. Dad was at the office and Mom was out shopping with her book club friends. The house was quiet, filled with afternoon sunlight and the faint smell of lavender potpourri Mom kept in every room. I went to Dad's study to look for the photo albums. The room was exactly as it had always been: dark wood, leather chairs, walls lined with architecture books and framed blueprints. I found the albums in the cabinet beneath the window, but as I pulled them out, an envelope fell from between two of the books. It was thick, cream-colored, and unsealed. My name was written across the front in my father's precise handwriting: Emma, wedding. My stomach tightened. I shouldn't open it, I knew that, but my hands moved before my brain could stop them. Inside were bank statements, dozens of them, transfers, deposits, withdrawals, all dated over the past 6 months. My eyes scanned the pages, trying to make sense of the numbers. Then I saw it, a transfer memo. Wedding expenses, Emma Morrison. My breath caught. These were payments I hadn't authorized, deposits into vendor accounts I'd already paid, contributions to a wedding fund I didn't know existed. And the amounts, they were staggering. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the photographer, everything I thought Marcus and I had paid for ourselves had been secretly supplemented by my father. But that wasn't the worst part. At the bottom of the envelope was a handwritten note on my father's letterhead. "Emma, I know you wanted to do this yourself, but I couldn't let you struggle. You've worked so hard your whole life. Let me give you this one thing. Don't tell your mother. Don't tell Derek. This is between us. Dad." My hands shook as I photographed every page, every statement, every note. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, my mind racing. Why would Dad do this behind my back? Why the secrecy? And why did the note specifically say not to tell Derek? I didn't confront my parents. Not then. Part of me wanted to believe it was a generous gesture, a father's love expressed the only way he knew how. But something about it felt wrong. The secrecy, the way he'd bypassed me entirely, the way every vendor suddenly had more availability, better options, upgrades I hadn't requested but somehow appeared anyway. The wedding day arrived crisp and clear, late September in Chicago, the kind of day that feels like a gift. The ceremony was perfect. I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, saw Marcus waiting for me with tears in his eyes, and for a few hours I forgot about the envelope, the questions, the strange weight of secrets I didn't understand. The reception began beautifully. The ballroom glowed with soft lighting and centerpieces that looked like something from a magazine. Our first dance felt like floating. The dinner was exquisite. I caught myself thinking maybe I'd been paranoid. Maybe Dad's gesture was pure, uncomplicated love. Then came the toasts. Marcus's best man spoke first, funny and warm. My maid of honor followed, tearful and sweet. My father stood next, glass raised, his voice steady and proud. "To my daughter Emma, who has always made me proud, may your marriage be filled with the same grace and strength you've shown your whole life." It was perfect. Too perfect. And then Derek stood up. I hadn't planned for Derek to give a toast. He wasn't in the wedding party. But suddenly he was standing, microphone in hand, his expression unreadable. Mom's face went pale. Dad set down his glass, jaw tightening. "Before we toast the bride," Derek said, his voice carrying across the silent room, "I think it's time we talk about who really paid for this day." My heart stopped. Marcus's hand found mine under the table, squeezing hard. Derek smiled, but it wasn't kind. "See, my sister Emma has spent her whole life believing she's the responsible one, the independent one, the one who doesn't need help from anyone." He paused, letting the words settle. "And I let her believe that because it was easier to telling the truth." "Derek," Dad said sharply, standing, "sit down." But Derek ignored him. "For the past 8 years, I've been funding this family. Not Dad, me." Murmurs rippled through the room. I couldn't breathe. "What are you talking about?" I whispered, but my voice was lost in the growing noise. Derek reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. 8 years ago, I dropped out of college. Everyone thought I was a failure. Mom made excuses. Dad wrote checks he thought were keeping me afloat. Emma looked at me with pity. He held up the paper. But what nobody knew was that I'd started a software company with my roommate, a little app called StreamVault. The name hit me like ice water. StreamVault, the cloud storage platform that had been acquired by a tech giant for $340 million 2 years ago. It had been all over the news. "That's impossible," I said, my voice shaking. You were broke. You lived in that apartment with no furniture." "I was building something," Derek said quietly, "and I kept it secret because I knew if Dad found out, he'd want to control it. If Mom found out, she'd worry. And if you found out, Emma, you'd try to manage it for me." He held up the paper. "After the acquisition, I had money, more money than I knew what to do with, and I watched Dad's firm struggle. The recession hit him hard. He was bleeding money, taking out loans, but he was too proud to tell anyone." Dad's face was ashen. Mom was crying silently. "So I helped," Derek continued. "Anonymous investments, silent partnerships. I kept Morrison and Associates afloat. I paid off the second mortgage on the house. I covered Mom's medical bills when she had surgery last year." He looked directly at me. And when Emma decided to plan her wedding without asking for help, I watched Dad panic because he couldn't afford to contribute the way he wanted to. The room was completely silent now. Every eye was on us. "So I funded it," Derek said. "Every upgrade, every extra expense. Every time Emma thought she was paying for something herself, it was actually my money being filtered through Dad's accounts, because I knew she'd never accept help from her failure of a brother." I felt like I was underwater, drowning. "Why?" I managed. "Why would you do this?" Derek's expression softened. "Because you're my sister. Because you spent your whole life working twice as hard for half the recognition. Because Mom and Dad taught you that asking for help was weakness." He set down the microphone and walked toward me. "And because I wanted you to have the wedding you deserved without the burden of knowing it came from the family disappointment." Mom spoke for the first time, her voice breaking. "Derek, we never thought you were a disappointment." "Yes, you did," Derek said simply. "All of you did. And I let you because it was easier than explaining that I'd built something on my own terms." He looked at Dad. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but you would have tried to advise me, invest in it, make it yours. I needed it to be mine." Dad stood slowly, his hands shaking. "Son, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Derek replied. "I didn't do this for gratitude. I did it because you're my family, and families help each other, even when it's complicated." He turned back to me. "Emma, I'm sorry I couldn't tell you before. I knew it would hurt you to know you didn't fund this yourself, but you did. Everything you've accomplished, that's yours. This wedding, these people celebrating you, that's because of who you are, not what you paid for." Tears streamed down my face. Marcus stood and walked to Derek, extending his hand. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for caring about her that much." Derek shook his hand, then pulled me into a hug. "You were never invisible, Em. I saw you. I always saw you." The reception continued in a daze. Guests approached Derek with questions, congratulations, confusion. Dad sat with his head in his hands, Mom beside him speaking in low, urgent tones. I moved through it all mechanically, smiling, thanking people, pretending my entire understanding of my family hadn't just shattered. Later, in a quiet corner, Dad found me. "Emma, I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough. "I should have told you the firm was struggling. I should have been honest." "Why weren't you?" I asked. He looked old suddenly, fragile in a way I'd never seen. "Because I was ashamed. Because I built that business from nothing, and watching it fail felt like watching my entire legacy crumble. And because I couldn't stand the idea that my daughter, my brilliant, capable daughter, would see me as weak." "I would never have thought that," I whispered. "I know," he said, "but I thought it about myself." Mom joined us, her mascara smudged, her usual composure gone. "I knew about Derek," she admitted. "Not at first, but 2 years ago he told me. He made me promise not to tell you or your father. He said he wanted to help without making it a thing." "But you let me believe Derek was aimless," I said. "You made excuses for him." "Because he asked me to," Mom said. "He didn't want the pressure of everyone's expectations. He wanted to succeed on his own terms, without the Morrison name attached to everything he did." I thought about all the times I'd pitied Derek, all the moments I'd felt superior because I had my life together and he didn't. The shame of it burned. 3 days after the wedding, Derek and I met for coffee in a quiet cafe near my apartment. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Finally, I said, "Why didn't you just tell me?" Derek stirred his coffee, considering. "Because you needed to believe you were independent. You built your entire identity around not needing help, not being a burden. If I'd told you I was successful and wanted to help, you would have refused. You would have seen it as charity." "It was charity," I said, but there was no heat in it. No, Derek said firmly. It was family. There's a difference. He pulled out his phone and showed me something, a detailed spreadsheet of every payment he'd made over the past 8 years. The business investments in Dad's firm, the medical bills, the house mortgage, and there, at the bottom, wedding expenses. Emma. I tracked everything, he said, not because I wanted you to owe me, but because I wanted you to understand that I wasn't the person you thought I was. I wasn't careless or aimless or lost. I was strategic. I was building something. And when I had the resources to help the people I loved, I did. I stared at the numbers, staggered by the amounts. This is millions, Derek. I have millions, he said simply, and no one to spend them on except the people who matter. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm sorry I looked down on you. I'm sorry I thought you were a failure. Derek reached across the table and took my hand. I know, and I forgive you, because I let you think that. I could have told you the truth at any time, but I chose not to. That's on me. The weeks that followed were strange, like learning to walk in a house where all the furniture had been rearranged. Dad started therapy, working through the shame of his business struggles and his inability to ask for help. Mom and Derek began having weekly lunches, rebuilding a relationship that had been built on half-truths for too long. And me? I had to confront the uncomfortable reality that my independence had been partially an illusion, and that accepting help wasn't weakness, it was connection. 6 months after the wedding, Derek and I stood in the empty offices of Morrison and Associates. Dad was retiring, transitioning the business to a partnership structure that included Derek as a silent investor and me as a consultant on financial strategy. Did you ever resent me? I asked Derek as we looked at the architectural models in Dad's office. Derek considered the question. Sometimes, he admitted, but not the way you think. I resented that you didn't have to hide who you were. You could be successful openly, celebrate your achievements, be proud. I had to stay in the shadows because I knew if I stepped into the light, everyone would want something from me. And now? I asked. Now I'm tired of hiding, and I think you're tired of pretending you don't need anyone. He was right. The wedding toast had shattered something, but it had also revealed something true. Families are messy, complicated, built on secrets and sacrifices that don't always make sense from the outside. My brother wasn't the failure I believed him to be. My father wasn't the invincible figure I had imagined. My mother wasn't just the peacekeeper making excuses. They were all flawed, human, trying to love each other in imperfect ways. Marcus and I moved into a new apartment that summer, one we chose together, paid for together, with no secret contributions from anyone. Derek helped us move, showed up with his truck and his terrible jokes, and for the first time in years, I laughed with him without an undercurrent of pity or superiority. The day we finished unpacking, Derek handed me an envelope. Inside was a check made out to a charity I'd mentioned once in passing, months before the wedding. The amount made my breath catch. "You're donating this in my name?" I asked. "No," Derek said. "I'm donating it in our names, yours and mine, because you taught me something that day, Emma. You taught me that success means nothing if the people you love don't know they're loved." I thought about the wedding, the toast, the revelation that changed everything, and I realized Derek's gift wasn't the money, it was the truth. The gift was showing me that being seen, being known, being loved, that's what family is supposed to be. Not perfect, not simple, but real. Some revelations destroy families. Ours rebuilt us, piece by painful piece, into something more honest than we'd ever been before. And if you've ever felt like the responsible one, the independent one, the one who doesn't need help, know this: accepting love isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you can do. Share your story below and subscribe for the next.